are stepping into a new theme for the next month of June, and it's called Loving Marriage and Loving Families, right? Anybody have a great loving family that you can appreciate so much, right? Any of you look up to your parents as a married couple and just want to be like them, like marriage goals, you know? Hashtag marriage goals. I truly believe that in the kingdom of God, there is a place for true godly marriages and unbelievably God-honoring families. There is a picture and there is a plan for God-honoring families. And I'll let you into a bit of my story. And I know some of you have heard many of my stories. But for those 2 or 3 of you that are in here today that haven't heard, I'm going to share them with you today. But one of the things that really changed my notion or my narrative about marriage was really in the first couple of months that Megan and I were married. And I grew up in a very close family. I mean, we were intimately entwined together, that we were in each other's spaces each and every single weekend. Like, that was on the calendar. And it wasn't just 1 hour for a coffee, but it was Saturdays we were at the sporting events. In the mornings, we were at the lunches in the afternoons, and we were watching rugby or Formula One or football or something in the evenings. The weekends were spent with each other intimately. And when Megan and I got married, all of a sudden there was this tug of war. Well, who do I satisfy here? Who do I spend time with? Because I know I'm meant to spend time with my wife, but this is what we've been doing with my family the whole time. And now Megan's family is also involved, so I've got to spend time with them, so I can't spend as much time with my family as I want to. And I found myself in this emotional tug of war of commitment, of who do I satisfy? And Megan and I were having not a heated discussion, but we were having a firm conversation, let's call it that, of just really what the schedule looked like, because Megan's very structured and I'm not so structured, and so I kind of just went where the wind would blow me on a particular day. And so we were having this firm discussion with each other about expectations and who we were going to spend time with on a particular weekend. And Megan said to me, put aside my parents and put aside your family. When do you want to spend time with me? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, first and foremost, I'm your family. Your family is your family, but the Bible says leave and cleave, right? And so you've got to make time for your family, your nucleus, and she became my nucleus. She was the one that I was intimately involved with, that I was intimately meant to make time for each and every single day on weekends. And from that, then we would navigate to our parents and our siblings and our brothers and our sisters and our friends. But if we weren't getting the first thing right, then let's not even step into the rest of the family. And so that was where one of the narratives really changed for my life, that I had to change the way that I thought about family and marriage. But the other thing that really changed my mind was that I realized one thing, that I wasn't capable of doing everything. And the reason why I say that was because Megan was in the labor ward. And if you know my history, I've been in and out of hospital for the past 23 years. I have been the guinea pig, the lab rat of multiple doctors over the past 23 years. So I have developed a very strong affinity towards needles. I mean, if you've ever had a liver biopsy, I mean, the needle is this long and it's about this thick and it's got a scissors inside of it, you know, and I've had that and I didn't flinch with that. But Megan's in the labor ward and she has to have a spinal tap because she's going for a cesarean. And so the doctor, this 5'2", 73-year-old man says, Bruce, you need to hold Megan's head and you need to arch her over to open up the vertebra so I can get the spinal tap in there and we can get going with this. And so I think, well, I'm not scared of needles at all. So I'm going to stare this thing down fearlessly, and I'm going to watch this happen because this looks awesome. And so I arch Megan over, and I start looking at this needle, and this needle gets inserted into the spine. And I don't know if this was a joke that the doctor had, but he decided to flex the needle, and the needle bent. And in that moment, I just washed over, and I passed out. And 5 seconds later, I woke up to the 73-year-old, 5'2" doctor trying to push me up, bearing in mind I'm 6'5", 100 kilograms. This guy is not meant to hold me. He's offering me an apple juice on the floor, saying, are you all right? Are you okay? Let me help you up. And I realized that I'm not capable of everything, and so therefore I need to let go of a few things. But I am so privileged to be married to Megan. Not just because Megan is who she is, but it's something that was dreamed about in God's plan right from the beginning of time. And it's so good to know that I'm in the midst of God's plans. And Megan is in the midst of God's plans. And so I really want to lean into this conversation about loving marriages and loving families for these next couple of weeks. And so I'm going to go to Genesis 1, verse 27 to 28. And you guys can read with me. And it says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said to them, 'Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth and subdue it.'" Now, I need to show you the order of things right now, because it wasn't that God made man and female and then he said, "Go forth and multiply." He said, "No, go and be fruitful and then multiply." Right? See, the whole thing about marriage is that before there was a greater family, there was a nucleus, there was a marriage, there was a man and there was a woman, and they were married together, and God blessed them, and he said, "Be fruitful in your marriage, go and do what I have tasked you to do, and in the midst of doing what I have tasked you to do, in the midst of what I've called you to do, go and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." It says, "Be fruitful and then increase." But the thing about being fruitful is that fruits require roots, right? You're not going to be a tree if you're not firmly rooted into the ground, and your nutrients, your sustenance isn't being drawn out of something of a resource. If you are just a tree trunk that is having branches attached to it, you will never bear fruit. But if you're rooted into the ground, if you're rooted into a source, you will bear fruits from that source. So in order to bear fruit, we have to plant roots. One of the core beliefs in our church is that the family is the most basic form of community. The family is where community starts. And as a family, we can help direct each other on how to navigate difficult situations, how to forgive your spouse, or how to forgive your sibling, or how to pursue a dream. And you come together. You are not separate from each other, but you come together. And in that togetherness, you are blessed to pursue a calling, to pursue an ambition, to pursue a dream. But it requires roots, and it requires foundations to be dug in the soil. To be part of a family means that it's the place where we're taught to stick together through seasons, through every season. Seeing, knowing, loving, and serving. It's where we practice relating within the four walls of our home, within the safety of our home, so that when we go out into the scary world, then we're equipped to love others and have grace on others and have patience with each other, because those things have been practiced at home. It's where we learn how to ask good questions, because we practice good questions at home. It's where we learn how to show empathy towards people, because we learned how to show empathy for our siblings and for our parents at home. It's where we learn how to extend forgiveness, because we've practiced forgiving our family members at home. It's where we've learned how to work through our differences and through conflict, because we've practiced it at home. If we don't practice these things at home, then we'll never be equipped to go out into the world and encounter the world, because the home is the safe place to make mistakes, right? To land softly. So that when we go out into the world, we're equipped to navigate those things. Family was supposed to be our first community. A gathering of people who accepted and loved us, and then taught us to accept and love others well. So guys, this was God's plan. This was the place where God would teach the family His glory, would teach him His kindness, would teach them patience, would teach them grace and gentleness and forbearance and tolerance. This is where the fruits of the Spirit would first manifest themselves in the family. So that when they are navigated in the family and we've become accustomed to those morals and those values and those positions, then we take it out into the world. And even though the world is vastly different from us, it will never change us, because our foundations and our roots are set. Can I say that for many of us, as we grew up, the way that we are wired, the way that we do things is largely, vastly because that's what we have perceived at home. If you've perceived addiction at home, there's more than likely that there is going to be addiction in your life in the future because you've perceived that in some way. If there is abuse at home, it's more than likely that in the future you will experience or be part of abuse in the future because that's what you have taken into your life. If there is sexual immorality in your home, then more than likely that's where you will be inclined to in the future. This isn't a far reach of a statement. This is statistically there that if you have experienced certain things at home, that you will replicate and multiply those things into your life in the future. But what about if you've experienced compassion at home? What about if you experienced patience at home? What about if you've experienced love at home? What about if you've experienced forgiveness and generosity? The statistics says that as you grow up, you will develop your world ideologies, your morals, your values, how you navigate the world in the future. You develop those tools, those equipping moments by the age of 12. So that by 12, you have an opinion about what you think the world is. And as you navigate the complexities of the world, as you go into your first job, as you go into your marriage, as you go into a relationship, then you will navigate those things according to your ideologies. If you get into a place of conflict or confrontation, if you find yourself in a place of illness or sickness, you will navigate those things emotionally because of the ideologies that have been taught to you at home, in your family, in that place of safety or not so safety. And that's not just a burden that is on parents, but that's a responsibility of siblings. That's a responsibility to aunts and uncles. When we come and we do child dedications here once every term, we bring the parents forward because we want to pray over the parents, because there is a legacy, there is an inheritance that we take from how we were raised to be, we take into our children's lives, and we commit that inheritance to God to say, God, I am going to navigate how to let go of the bad things that I experienced in my life, and I'm going to give my children a legacy of good things, godly things, glorious things. But it all depends on on the roots. It all depends on the foundations. Do we navigate the lives of our families based on the roots and the foundations of this world of sin and of shame and of guilt and of regret, of brokenness? Or are we navigating our families, and are we discipling our families and teaching our families through the foundations and the roots of the Spirit of God? See, the original plan was always that the legacy and the inheritance of God would flow from the mother and the father into the children, and so into their grandchildren and into further generations, because the notion or the culture of family is that there is discipleship. The original plan for discipleship was intimately woven into families, into husbands and wives, into children and siblings. If you go to Psalm 78, verse 1 to 7, it says, "My people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things, things from the old, things we have heard and known, things our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from our descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power and the wonders He has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, with which He commanded our ancestors to teach their children." Notice that. So the next generation would know Him, or know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. And then they would put their trust in God and would not forget His deeds, but would keep His commands. It is crazy for me to think that the way that I parent my children, the way that I live my life, has a contribution to whether Ruby and Nathan will encounter Jesus in their adulthood. That is almost a pressure that I don't want to bear. I don't want to bear the pressure of the consequence of their eternity. But that is something that I have to. Because God has placed the responsibility of their lives in my family. We can so often find discipleship, whether informally or formally, whether by mistake or on purpose, around campfires, on random holidays or random camping trips, or driving in the car, picking your kids up from school. And can I say this, that this isn't just limited to parents with kids, but God has placed spiritual kids in your life. God has placed you in positions to mentor people, disciple people, consult with people, and those people also inherit a legacy from you because community is family. We find ourselves around dinner tables. We find ourselves around campfires. We find ourselves in cars. We find ourselves in business meetings. And interwoven in the midst of those things is God's original plan for community and for families. To see the culture of God interwoven into your life, to bring freedom, to bring hope, to bring trust, to bring security, to bring strength, to bring empowering, to bring equipping. Because of one simple thing. Because God's covenant rests in families. Do you understand that God's covenant rests in families and communities? That right now in your life, with your parents, with you, with your kids, whether you are a parent or whether you are single, God's covenant of families rests and works through you. It's not an original thought, guys. This is all the way through the Bible. You can see it woven all the way from Genesis, all the way through to Revelations, through the Kings, through Exodus, through Deuteronomy, through Leviticus, all the way through the Judges, into the Gospels and through the Gospels and into Paul. There is this notion, there is this narrative of I have a covenant with God and He has a covenant with me. You go from God to Noah. He says to Noah, be fruitful and multiply. He says to God, or God says to Abraham, to you and your descendants. God says to Moses, to the fruit of your womb. God says to David, for your house and kingdom will endure forever. And God says to Jesus, through us through Jesus, I will meet you in eternity. Here is my son. There is a legacy of covenants that He has placed in your life. But if your roots aren't planted, then you sabotage that covenant. If your roots aren't planted in the correct source, they aren't founded in the correct way, then you sabotage, you fall short of that blessing. Family was God's original plan for humanity. And I've just got 4 questions for us to ask this morning. Number 1, I want us to reflect on what is your ideal dream for your family? What is your ideal dream for your family? What is the legacy that you are creating through your family? Or is the legacy that you are still creating through the habits and the traditions and the rituals that your parents have passed on to you? Are those grounded in God? Are those grounded in the world? Are those grounded in culture? Or are those grounded in the kingdom of God? Are we passing on things of the world to our kids, or are we passing on the things of God to our children, to the people that we are consulting, to the people that we are mentoring? Is what you're teaching your children guiding them to Christ or away from Him? And this is probably one of the hardest things for me to tackle because I know there's always things for me to apologize for, but is there anything you need to apologize to your children for? If you had to look at the breadcrumbs of your parenthood, if you had to look at the breadcrumbs of your adult life to your siblings or to your parents, to your children, is there anything that you've done that you need to apologize for? Because can I say this? A simple apology can change the trajectory of someone else's life by 180 degrees. It can turn it from offense and destruction into forgiveness and provision. It can turn that around by just a simple repentance or a simple apology. But it requires us to look at our roots and to say, God, is this of you or is this of me? But the other thing about family was that before there was family, there was a marriage. Before there was an extended family, before there was a subduing and filling the earth, there was a marriage. There was Adam and Eve. There was a male and a female. There was this God-blessed covenant relationship. And in Matthew 19, verse 4-6, it says, haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh, and therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. And if you go back to Genesis 1, verse 27, it says that God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth and subdue it. But it comes back to my statement, my original statement of what are the roots that you are planting? In order for you to have good fruits in your marriage, in order for you to have good fruits in your relationship, what are the roots that you are planting? What is the source that they are linked to? Whatever roots you plant will produce fruits in your marriage. This is a covenant thing. It's a partnering thing. It's a co-laboring, blessed by God, but it requires mutual love. It requires mutual respect. It doesn't require domineering. It doesn't require manipulation. So many of us can come out of a culture where there is a patriarchal structure where you just domineer over your spouse in whatever context. Maybe you've got the stronger personality, therefore you dominate them and you don't give them a rule or you don't give them an opportunity to contribute. But God says He brought male and female together and He blessed that. And in that blessing, He gave them a task. He gave them both the calling. It wasn't just that He gave the male or He gave the female, but He gave them both united together. He gave them a calling. In Matthew, it says that we become one flesh, but also we improve each other. We complement each other. We grow more like each other. Megan had this epiphany a few years ago, where she was having a coffee with a friend of hers, and they were having a great time. And then all of a sudden, she made a joke. She made a sarcastic comment. And as she made the sarcastic comment, she almost caught the words coming out of her mouth. And she was caught in bewilderment and surprise because all of a sudden she realized that sounded exactly like Bruce. But then on the other side of things, I truly believe that hopefully, that because I've been married to Megan, that I've become more structured, that I've become more detailed, that I look at things differently because I've been joined to her together, not just in body, but in mind and in heart. And we share ambitions, we share dreams, we share observations, we share conclusions, we share the consequences of things. And so as we are married together, we become more like each other. We came together differently, with different skills, with different ambitions, with different dreams, but we came together. And the reason why that is so important is because marriage was never meant to be a contract. It was meant to be a covenant. A covenant in itself commands a blessing, so it doesn't leave you where you are, but it takes you into a place of a larger capacity, a larger ambition, a larger dream. But a marriage contract keeps you where you are. A covenant is not to lodge you, but a contract restricts you. A covenant says that I've come to serve you completely, fully, with everything I am, but a contract says that I have come so that you will serve me. A contract is about finding a reason to disqualify a person, but a covenant is about finding a reason to love your spouse irrespective of their faults, irrespective of their irritations, irrespective of how bad they smell in the morning, or irrespective of how dirty they look at night, whatever it might be. A covenant is about finding a reason to love them irrespective of their flaws. See, we don't have a contract with Jesus. He has a covenant with us. Can you imagine if Jesus had a contract with us? How would our relationship look like? Would He restrict us to say, you have to live like this? I'm not going to help you, but you just need to live according to my criteria. No, Jesus comes in with a covenant of grace and says, in the midst of your flaws, I'm going to help you to change because we have become one. As I remain in you, you will remain in me. As I abide in you, you will abide in me. And so Jesus is intimately intertwined with our lives and changes us from the inside out. See, because a covenant isn't a contract, a covenant is a promise. A covenant is the thing that you say to your spouse at the wedding altar, where the pastor says, in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, when you have and when you lack, when you are irritable and when you are nice, till death do us part, I commit to finding reasons to love you each and every single day. I commit to building you up. I commit to encouraging you. I commit to promising you each and every single day. I commit to bringing you coffee in the morning and a meal at night. This is for the husbands and the wives. I commit to serving you with everything I have. Even if you don't serve me, I commit to doing that to you, because I want God's grace and His mercy to reflect through me into you. And as God is doing a work in me, my prayer is that God is doing a work in you. A covenant isn't a contract, it is a promise. And when we are married to each other, we live in that covenant. Can I say this with all the love in the world? That if you are pursuing a life where you are living with a partner but not in covenant with God, then you aren't receiving the fullness of God. And it's not to say that God doesn't want that for you. He's just waiting for you to want that for yourself. This is about you and God. This isn't about me telling you a message. But this is the promise that I know God has for you in your relationships. Not for you to go have a partner so you can have an escape clause, but so that you can have a partner and you can be part of helping that partner to experience God for themselves. So I want to ask you these questions before we finish off this morning, band. You guys can come up. How have you contributed to grow your spouse? In your marriage, how have you contributed to build your spouse up, to encourage your spouse, to affirm your spouse, to love on your spouse, to show grace on your spouse? Can I ask this question? What were the roots that you came into your marriage with? Have you availed yourself to identifying those roots, going for counseling, figuring those things out, and then coming into your marriage more whole? Have you committed together as a couple to go to courses, to seek God together, to pray together, to form new roots together so that you can command the blessing of God in your marriage together and not in opposition to each other? What are the roots that you are planting for yourself so that you can better serve your spouse? Do you build your spouse up? Do you build your partner up? Do you build them up or do you break them down? And probably one of the most crucial questions that I've had in my life that I've had to reflect on. How well have you done in keeping to the promise that you made to your spouse and to God? In closing, there's a gentleman by the name of Lewis Smead. He wrote an article called The Power of a Promise. And he made this quote in that article. He said, somewhere people still make and keep promises. They choose not to quit when the going gets rough because they promised once to see it through. They stick to lost causes. They hold on to a love grown cold. They stay with people who have become pains in the neck. They still dare to make promises and care enough to keep the promises they make. I want to say that if you have a ship, you will not desert. If you have a people, you will not forsake. If you have a cause, you will not abandon. Then you are like God. If you have a ship, you will not desert. If you have a people, you will not forsake. If you have a cause, you will not abandon. Then you are like God. Why is that statement made? Because look at us. Look at the battle that God had to go through for millennia, from the beginning of creation, to such an extent that He had to give His Son to overcome that and finally reconcile to His beloved. See, you and I are His treasure. You and I are the thing that He most values. You are the thing that He cherishes. You are the thing that He dreams about. You are the thing that He knit together. You are the thing that He caused to come into the being. You are the thing, you are the person, you are the individual that He gave of Himself to bring life. Yet we have been at odds with God our whole life. Humanity has been at odds with God since the beginning of creation, but He sent His Son to say, no longer will I be at odds with you, and I will give you an opportunity to no longer be at odds with me, but I will bring us together. I will give you a sacrifice that is not only a sweet incense to me, but it is sweet aroma to you, to your life. It brings goodness. It brings faithfulness. It restores trust. It brings hope. It brings encouragement. It brings strength. It brings wisdom. It brings discernment. It gives you tools to navigate the complexity of life. When you don't have the answer, it gives you all of those things, and that thing is named my Son. To bring you closer to Him. so that you would discover your original design once again. Discover your original purpose. To discover the meaning of your life. To bring you into a place of joy and security and happiness and hopefulness and fulfillment. To look upon your relationships and see God's favor in those relationships. To look upon your kids and not see the brat that is playing in front of a screen, but to see God's creation and His potential. To take the lens and the scales off of your eyes of persecution and judgment and condemnation, and to take those scales off and to bring hopefulness and belief. To look at yourself in the mirror and look at and see pridefully who you are, to see His beautiful creation intricately and intimately woven together. In the midst of your flaws, He sees you. And in the midst of you, He sees His Son. His Son that was on the cross. And as He was on the cross, He saw you and I. And He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in His last words, He said, it is finished. That struggle, that separation, that blockage, that ceiling, that limitation, that is gone because I have died. But He didn't just die, but He went to war. He went to battle. He stole the keys of death and He rose again to life, and He brought a new hope and a new future. And today, that is for each and every single one of us. That is for you and I. That the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, our Savior and our Redeemer came to this earth to die for us, to change our lives, to remove the legacy of hurt, to remove the legacy of offense, to remove the legacy of destruction, to remove the legacy of abuse, to remove the legacy of addiction, to remove the legacy of doubt, to remove the legacy of immorality and unfaithfulness, to remove all of those things and to say the old is gone, the new is here. You are a new creation because of what I did on the cross. No longer do you need to be held captive by those things, but here is a new lease on life. Here is a new dream. Here is a new spirit. I give it to you, and His name is Jesus. That is for you and I today. And all it takes for you to change the trajectory of your life, to change the lens of your life, is to say, Jesus, today I surrender my life to you. I give my life to you. I give my marriage to you. I give my business to you. I give my family to you. I give my kids to you. God, just take control.